Hi and welcome to a little presentation on PowerPoint for teaching. This is specifically aimed at teachers and those of you who have vocational students in your class. We're going to be covering some ideas about underutilization of PowerPoint in the class, using learning principles, fonts and icons, and finally all about imagery. So let's start with a very simple technique. This is about using PowerPoint to actually play little games in the class. So to go from one slide to other slides using information. So I can click on the green dot and it'll take me to this. I can click the go back slide and it takes me to this. And I can potentially click on the yellow slide and it'll take me to this. So let's have a look at how we did this. This is probably one of the easiest things to do within PowerPoint, and it's something that has been around in PowerPoint for quite a few years. So when you've got an object, and it can be a photo, it can be text, and it can be an object, you simply right click on that and you can see the option for a link. And you create the link and select the slide that you want it to go to. Simple as that. So that's a nice simple technique that you can use across a wide range of possibilities. So now let's look at some cool learning principles. Firstly, slides can help build better understanding. They can also reduce mental fatigue. When a student has to go from one thing to another, unless there's a clear flow, they can often be found wanting, and that extra cognitive load reduces their ability to learn. And finally, my favorite, slides can stimulate learners' creativity. The color, the layout, the way it looks actually stimulates a learner's ability to think outside the square laterally and really poke their creative bone. So the first principle I want to address is this concept of spatial predictability. That's when a person expects something to be in a certain place, and when it's there, it actually reduces any levels of anxiety or stress that it could be created by having something coming out of the left field, so to speak, and disrupting their cognitive flow. So on the slide now, I've got steps 1 through to 6. And if you were the student, you'd expect step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to be in that order. So if you were revealing these in your PowerPoint, you'd reveal them in such a way. Alternatively, if you've got a main slide where you're keeping all this content and you're maybe using that first technique to go to and from, the same principle applies. So let's see how we might use the morph function now to gain that attention and improve retention. So let's say I just clicked on part 1. You can use the morph technique to increase the size of that step and maybe put some additional information in there. And then going to the next one, click on number 2, same thing. It's very engaging. It keeps the person's attention to that particular main slide. We go to the slide we start from, highlight the left-hand column and press Control-D or Command-D to duplicate the slide. Now PowerPoint knows that the same figures have been duplicated, so it can see that there's the same boxes appearing in the second slide. So if we go back to our first one, we're going to make this one grow into the screen that we see in the second slide. So we go to the second slide, we grab that image, and in this case I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger to cover the rest of the screen. I'm just going to hide the rest of these by selecting all of them whilst holding down the Shift key and right-clicking and sending it to the back. And I also want to grab that text and make it larger, so I'm just going to go into the text formatting here and make it a bit larger. Now we select the 2 slides, going to transitions, and you'll see morph as one of the transitions here. That's only a recent addition in Office 2020 and 2021. So we select that and we'll see what that does. So we'll go into the slideshow. And there you have it. So let's change subjects now to fonts and icons. Your choice of fonts and icons makes a huge difference to the way your presentation looks, feels, and acts. You can use icons to draw attention between different points on a page, and that same icon can be used as a visual reference for your audience when you need to make a point about that particular key learning or something like that. The font selection itself should be something that is modern, a sans serif font, in other words, one that doesn't have the little tabs at the end of the T's and S's, and is quite clean. I certainly prefer the light versions of fonts. So in this, if you go to fonts, you'll see a drop down here, Avenir, and then you've got Avenir Light, Helvetica, and you've got Helvetica Light. I just seem to like these, even thin. I seem to like these because they do look quite modern, and there's no distractions by having overly complicated fonts. For icons, we simply insert, and you'll see at the top of the tab here in the bar, you've got a icons logo. If you click on that, you should get a series of icons come up on the side here. Now, in the Macintosh version, or the Apple version, I should say, it appears on the right-hand side, and you can choose icons here. In the Windows version, the box comes up in the middle, and you'll have the same selection of icons to choose from. You can search the icons to get something similar to what you want. So let's say I want something to do with fire. I've got fire hydrants, I've got things like that, and you can simply select what you want and insert it. Now, once you've inserted an icon, the beauty of these is that they are vector diagrams, which means as you make them larger or smaller, they stay very sharp. They don't pixelate. And the other thing is they are transparent. There's no background to them. And you can fill the graphic with the color of your choice to match the rest of the theme of your presentation. Before we move on totally from fonts, I want to show you this great little trick to create a vector image out of a letter or some text so that you can manipulate it, change its color, and that can actually really enhance the way you present information on a slide. So let's take a look at how to do that. So firstly, I'm just going to double click to create a text box, and I'm going to select a font. I'm going to create it quite large. I'm going to put a letter M in there. Now, if you've got text, you know you can't really do much with it. You can change its color, but that's about it. So with this technique, you actually, as I said, create a vector diagram. So let's see how you do that. So first of all, you insert a shape. So I'm just going to use a rectangle and go around it. And then you just flick that to the back. So I'll send that to the back so you can still see your letter. Then using the Shift key, I'll click on the letter as well, so you highlight both the boxes. And then it comes up with this great little option to merge shapes. And if you create intersect, that's what it does. And now that letter is a movable vector diagram. You can change its color, you can kind of make it a little bit 3D if you want. Look at that. So imagine what you can do with that. It could be a heading to a new topic, or it could be a heading to a chapter, and so on. I think this is a great little tool to create something that looks visually appealing. And as we heard before, having a visually appealing slide is really important to engaging that learner and their creativity. So let's now look at some of the imagery options we have within PowerPoint itself. I'm going to start with the design ideas. So if we start with a blank presentation, you can see that the layouts and the things that it chooses are quite mundane, a bit boring. Even the text is boring text, Calibri, which is still the default. So if you wanted to come up with something and you're not a graphic designer and you want something to look really nice, then potentially you can use the new design ideas from Microsoft Office. So if you wanted to do something about engines, for instance, on the right hand side here you can see this thing called design ideas. If you click on that, you'll see that the artificial intelligence will try to come up with something that has a reference to words that you have typed in on the page. And it won't just be the images it decides to offer you, but it's also the fonts. So all your fonts change. The selection of colors also changes. You now have a different selection of colors based on the new theme that it's offered you. So you'll see here, not only does it have images, but it also has video. Or, as I said, a nice image. And it comes up with all sorts of changes to the transitions and things like that. And you can see immediately how much nicer it looks. So if you're going to a new slide, the layout will include some sort of graphics that actually align with the theme that it's decided to offer you. So that's using the design ideas and starting from scratch. But even with the design ideas coming up with nice front pages, the rest of the pages in this layout particularly are still quite boring. So let's see how this content AI actually works. Let's say that we wanted to add a schedule. So we type in the word schedule, and I've got some text here I'll pop in. If we go back to design ideas, look at what it comes up with now. It analyzes the information within the slide and suggests a better form of layout. It understands that there's a schedule there, so it might look better like this, or this, or this. A much nicer looking slide. It even gives you some icons to use. Now let's talk about some of the stock imagery that comes with PowerPoint. So if you go into the Inserts menu, along with icons, you'll also see the Images tab. Now the Images tab shows a lot of stock photos that Microsoft has licensed so that you can use within any Microsoft product. It doesn't matter what you use it for, as long as you use it within that Microsoft product. Now it's a fantastic option. However, if you run out of ideas within that, I do suggest maybe looking at a royalty-free site like Unsplash, where they have multiple options there. You can see at the top, we've got technology, wallpapers, nature, people, architecture, and so on. So you should be able to find some lovely high-quality photos that you can use in your presentation on sites like Unsplash. That's a free one, but there are some paid ones also that can be recommended. Also within the Inserts tab, you have stickers. Now stickers are fun. So if you've got a fun presentation, you want to attach something that looks a little cartoonish, then stickers are fantastic for that. They can highlight specific things you're trying to show, and you can keep a certain theme to them as well. And finally, one of my favorites, which is illustrations. The thing with illustrations is that they are see-through vector diagrams, which means not only can they be pasted on any sort of background with all the content showing through from the background, but you can also dismantle them and color individual parts, delete, move, all the sorts of parts of that particular illustration. They are done in what's called flat design, which means the colors themselves are flat, there's no shading to them, etc., but they look incredibly sharp and incredibly modern. And again, you can search within illustrations to find things that go along with the theme of your presentation. And lastly, cut out people. So let's have a look at this one. So let's see what we can do with the cutout people. Not only can you choose a particular style, so if you just want one character to flow through all of your slides, you can choose that one character. But if you didn't want to represent a particular race or type of person, watch what you can do. Let me just select any one of these characters. I'll just select this and insert it. So here's Mara. Now, because it's a vector image, we can adjust her size nice and simply. And if we double click on that image, it brings up here the picture formatting qualities. And in this case, what I'm going to do is go to the picture, go to picture corrections, and just turn the brightness right down. So what you've got there is a lovely silhouette that you can place around and use as a basis for an image on your slide. So let's see now how we can use the morph transitions as an animation. So in this case, I've found a picture of a cutaway of a digital camera. And let's say we want to expose or go through the interior of that camera with our students. We could have that picture stagnant up there and simply point to it and talk about it, but it is stagnant and it isn't as interesting as it could be. So in our thumbnails over to the left, we'll just duplicate the entire window. And in this duplication, what we'll do is we'll then click on the image itself and duplicate the image. How do you duplicate it? Just Control D or Command D. I'm just going to move it back over the exact image. You can see here that the design ideas is still activated, so it wants to select and choose some things for me. I'll just deselect that for now so it doesn't keep trying to do my work for me. So let's say I want to zoom in just on the front of the camera here. So I could do that a couple of ways. Firstly, I would like to increase the size of that part of the image. So what I'll do, right click on the image, select crop, and I'll crop down to that little area. and I'll hit enter. Then I'll drag it to make it bigger. Let's put it over the sign again. And I actually might, that doesn't look like much, right? It doesn't look like you're magnifying anything. So I'll do a couple of other things here to make this look like I'm actually zooming into that area, okay? So firstly, I'll go to my picture format menu. On the crop image here, I can say crop to shape, and I'd rather that be a bit of a circle, okay? So it looks like you're zooming into a particular part of the image. I quite like that, okay? And I might give it a bit of a border as well, so it looks like I'm zooming into that specific part. But I want this to kind of disappear in the background so you can see that I'm zooming into this. So I'll click on the background image. I'll go to these artistic effects, and I might select something like this. Okay, so it just makes it look a bit different in the background, and you take your eyes off that and you're focused in on this area. So we apply the morph by selecting over here, transitions and morph. If I wanted to go across to, say, another part of the camera now, I simply duplicate that slide, take my image, and let's say I wanted to go to this part of the camera. I right click on crop again, but I've still got the rest of the camera behind it, so now I can maybe move it to this part. So if I play that now, it looks something like that. So now let's see how we can use this in maybe some other creative ways. So for instance, here I've simply got an onboarding process, and using that same zoom technique, I can zoom in on each section and talk about it as we go through it. So let's say we want to draw something or highlight something on this image. Now imagine this could be anything that you want to highlight. It could be a technical drawing, it could be a workplace, it could be a hazard identification situation. Whatever it is, just consider this for your situation. What we might do is go to the draw function, choose a pen. I'm going to choose a red color here, but we can always change the size and shape of the pen here. But I'm going to just choose this red pen. And I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to highlight this down here, and I'm going to say that these are both dangerous. So I might just write it in here with my mouse, and don't worry how bad it looks, and I'll just point to them both. Now obviously it takes a lot of time to do that in the classroom, and there's already annotated functions built into products like Zoom, etc. And if you're in a classroom itself, you won't have time to do that. So look what we can do here to actually bring this into being a part of the slide itself. So first we go in there and select the individual parts by holding down the Shift key. Now I've got these all selected as one, and this one over here as one. And what we can do now, if you go to animations, you'll see there's a new function in there, play and replay. If I click on play, look what happens. It actually draws that out for you, which you don't have to do. You can actually make it quicker or shorter based on your timing. So maybe I'll make it a bit quicker and play that. Okay, so you can see the advantage in being able to highlight maybe technical things or anything like that using this function, and it can draw it faster than you've drawn it yourself. So I think this is a fantastic little option. If you've got specific things you want to highlight and you don't want to use just plain text, and you don't have the time or the accuracy maybe to use a pen or something like that. So yeah, another great option to build into your slides before you even start. So here's a brief summary of the 10 things that we've covered today, including a little tip at the end about creating a QR code. In the Windows version of PowerPoint, you can get an add-in. So it's Get Add-ins, it's one of the tabs, and you can choose a QR code add-in. If you don't have that, if you've got a Mac, you can actually go on the web and select a website that can provide a QR code for your links. This is a great idea or a technique to allow students to use a QR code to jump to more information So maybe it's research, maybe it's a website with some videos on it, and so on. I think the QR code is an underrated element within a visual training aid like PowerPoint. So that's it for me for today. I hope you've enjoyed the tips and tricks that I've shown you today. If you've used some of them before, fantastic. And maybe you've seen new ways of using something you already were aware of. But in either case, I'd love your feedback. Please leave some comments if you can, or just send us feedback. All the best for now. This is Dan Hill from Spec Training.